and welcome. It's Howard from WeHab, and I'm here with David. And David, former client of Bali Beginnings, is now 20 months sober and absolutely flying. So, how are you, David?
Thank you. Doing well. It's been completely life-changing, I will say. Like, sobriety has been absolutely life-changing, and it's been a journey, and a beautiful one that's really forced me to kind of reflect and grow as an individual in many, many, many regards. And I'm not just trying to toot my own horn. I think that anybody who goes through this kind of an experience will say the same thing. I'm sure you know as well that it's a life-changing one that really, I believe, kind of levels you up in the direction of becoming the best version of yourself. So I'm absolutely adamant about, you know, what decision I've made to never touch alcohol again. And I feel like I'm even scared of this stuff now because I don't want to give up everything that I've gained since achieving a degree of consistent sobriety.
Nice. Yeah, and I see it like rolling the dice. So, I don't believe I could have a drink safely. Some people say, you know what, I'm not rolling a drink out forever. I'm just not drinking today. I never really given it that much thought. I like to think I'd never drink again. But for me, it's like rolling the dice. So maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. But why would I roll the dice and risk what I have today
Right.
from where we've been to, right? Because
Right.
like most of our stories, it was quite hard, and your story was quite hard. Do you want to touch a bit on what got you to us?
Yeah. Quite a few things. And I think that I didn't really realize the extent of it until I was able to get out of it. You know, there's a degree of being quote unquote like lost in the sauce where you don't really realize how bad the situation is until you do kind of like those exercises. For example, the timeline exercise, where you write down everything that, you know, you've gone through and how you got from point A to point B and B being at rehab. And then also kind of just removing yourself from that kind of a place. And the analogy that I kind of use is like GTA. Like, I remember being in rehab. I might maybe even said to you, I told you the Gen Z slang word NPC, which is a non-player character, and I kind of look at myself now as being like feeling like, you know, I look at my life now kind of from a third party perspective, like I'm watching myself play the game, and where I used to think that, you know, people were NPCs for not traveling and trying to do things like entrepreneurship and start businesses. I now realize that myself in the cycle of alcoholism and just drinking all the time, despite the fact that I was living in Bali, despite the fact that I had a life that looked great from the outside, I was kind of just doing the same shit every day, going through the motions.
Mm.
And now that I'm sober, I'm kind of just, I've started a business. I'm going around, driving around, kicking ass, making mistakes, learning from them, hiring people, firing people, getting burned, making huge sums of money, losing it. It's just like it's just on all the time, and it's super fun. And I never, ever, ever would be able to do it if I was still drinking. Back to your question about what got me here. Sorry for the little rant that I
No,
went
good.
on.
All good. I liked it.
What got me to Bali Beginnings? I've always loved to party. I went to a party school. I went to the University of Vermont, which used to be rated as one of the top party schools.
Top party
Yeah, in
schools.
the States, it's by, I think Playboy magazine does like a rating of like party schools, and they rate like the different universities. And UVM was on the list, or has been previously, but anyway, it also had a huge like skateboard and snowboard culture, which is kind
Okay.
of like rebellious and punk. So
Yeah.
the cool kids weren't the football players; they were the skaters that, you know, drank and smoked weed and snowboarded 5 days a week, which is what I did. And then after university, that kind of just continued. I found China, and I moved to China. And Chinese people love to drink. They love to smoke.
Really?
Yeah, part of
Because
China.
you can speak Mandarin, can't you?
Yeah, I speak fluent Chinese. Spent 8 to 10 years in China. That was my 20s. That was my goal. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I moved to China, and shortly after experiencing that, my father passed away. And I had worked like a 9 to 5 office job for about 18 months.
Mm. In
But
China,
no, in the United
in the
States,
US
sorry. So I
before
went
you
to
went.
China. I discovered China, and then I went back to do what I was supposed to do, which was, build the resume and use my university degree. And then my father passed away, and I just kind of said "F you" to everything. My thought at the time was that life is too short to do anything other than exactly what you want to do, and you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Screw making money was the idea that I had, because the way I saw people making money was through the corporate path. Entrepreneurship wasn't even like a thought to mine. It was just screw making money. I want to go to Asia and study Chinese and travel.
Mm.
And so I did that. And over the course of the next however many years, which definitely got exaggerated when I lived here in Bali during the pandemic, was that I kind of created a lifestyle of complete and total freedom. And I didn't really register the fact that with freedom comes responsibility. And I really took that
Ooh.
freedom to the limit with regard to drinking, and didn't really realize, how much of a slippery slope I had slipped on until it got so bad that, yeah, just, so many things had happened that, my family insisted that I find a place to sort out this issue that I had been telling myself wasn't an issue, despite all of these signs that
The
there was something that
evidence.
needed to be addressed.
All your family, yeah. I mean, if all your family 7,000, 8,000 miles away or whatever it is are telling you, then there's probably a problem.
Yeah, like, I mean, bless her soul. I respect I respect my mother so much for the enormous amount of support that she's given me.
Mm.
Um, so much more support than I see some of my other
Yeah.
friends get from their families with regard to just the unadulterated ability to make decisions about their lifestyle and what they want to do with complete and utter support. My mother has been on my team since day one, even though I've wanted to do stuff that isn't that normal, like living in China and studying Chinese and not working a corporate job, making jewelry and getting into real estate and making bucket hats and all the little business ventures that I've had. My mom's been super supportive of it. But, yeah, I don't even really know where I'm going with this at this
No.
point.
No, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I've had a super supportive mother with most stuff, but interestingly, with work and the rehab, it's not, and not from a bad place, just from a place of fear.
Really?
And particularly after watching me in 2017 lose my house and end up in massive debt,
Right.
starting the rehab when the volcano happened, Well, even back then it was, why would you do this? And then just fear, fear, bless her,
Yeah.
that's bad anxiety and stuff. What if it all goes wrong? Just want you to conform to the normal life. You've got a house now, just settle in, just pay the mortgage for 25 years and calm down. And then again, why are you starting again? It cost you everything and more, why? So, and it wasn't from a bad place. I have a very supportive mother, and family. I'm very blessed. But yeah, it was always a battle against, and lots of people. And I can understand after it's cost you everything. First time, okay, but after it's cost you everything, it does kind of make sense why, why would you go again when you've been so burnt? It's like the alcohol, right? Why, when I keep getting burnt, do I keep picking it up? And I got burnt the worst I've ever been by starting a rehab. So I guess there is sense in that when everyone did call me kind of crazy for starting again. And
Yeah.
then after COVID again. But yeah, I don't regret it. And do you regret any of the things that haven't worked? Like you said, the bucket hats and the jewelry?
No, I mean, I think that I think it's a certain personality type um, that we have as entrepreneurs. I think that, like, it's totally inspiring to see you continue doing something even after it failed once. I don't know what your why is, or if you're really just not interested in working like a corporate 9 to 5 kind of a job, but it's fascinating because, people, I think, will say that all the time when you're starting like something new, or we're starting a business, especially starting a business. What if this doesn't happen? What if it doesn't work? And the answer is, like, if it doesn't work, then I'm going to be in the exact same position as you. Like what you're doing today is my worst case scenario. I said that to my friend the other day, then I would have to get a job, and I would have to clock in. I would have to drive to work in the United States every single day. And to me, that's terrifying. So it doesn't really register with me when people question that, because literally, worst case scenario is, the day-to-day, everyday life for everyone who works a 9 to 5.
And I didn't work a 9 to 5. I ran a business before I only came out to work with the WeHab 2023, before I just ran it from afar. And one of my reasons why, probably threefold. Uncle and best friend's dead from this. I love what we do. Was twofold. Yeah, the business. I ran a business I hated for 10 years. And I remember being 10 years sober going, I didn't get 10 years sober for this shit. Quite frankly, I did not get 10 years sober for this. The stress was worse than running a rehab, which sounds mental when we give 24/7 support to some of the most unwell people because of where life's taken them, which is very challenging, but a lot less challenging than managing 15 tradesmen, I can tell you that.
Wow.
But the biggest one is regret. When I listened to something, people say you regret more the things you didn't do when you get older than the things you did. And I knew if I got, God willing, whatever willing, to 70 and I didn't do it, I'd always have an itch. Why didn't I start again? Why didn't I try again? Whereas I knew I'd never have the itch of leaving the construction business behind. I'd never okay, I could start again. I could go work for myself. I could just do a multitude of things if I wanted, not that I hope never to do them again, because I got so burnt out by it. But I knew, and partly because I had to pay off this massive debt. So I had to do, you said 9 to 5. I was doing 12 hours a day a lot of days because I had a £50,000 debt to pay off in 2017 that took a lot of years to pay off with a lot of extra hours.
Right.
And yeah, that was the final catalyst. It's like, right, I can now. Just my debt is cleared. Thank goodness I can go all in and give it a go. And I do feel I have the skill to come to Bali now, which I didn't when we first started. I had passion, but I didn't have skill to add to the team. So yeah, regret was the final one. It's like, I know what that life looks like. I've done that life, and it was like, it got me miserable. The same way my drinking got me miserable. And I say, same with fitness, health, drinking, all sorts of things. When it gets bad enough, we'll do something about it. And I could not. Literally, I made the decision, and within a week, I told my business partner and just said, you can have everything. I just want it out. And I do not for 1 second regret that. We even got an offer for close to £100,000 for the business a few months later. And still I don't know if I could have carried on those few months. It was just a hell grind, which is partly of my own design. I made it, right? So, but yeah, never ever regret leaving that. Thankfully, I've managed to make this stick so far.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's a beautiful story, man. I mean, I like I said, I rejected the 9 to 5 for so many years. I thought it was because, of my father's passing. But in that, I think I really just didn't look up to and admire people that were going down that route. And I genuinely looked up to and admired entrepreneurs that were starting their own thing and that were taking risks. And I don't know, it might have to be, there might be something to do with, better than I do, people that have issues with addiction, leaning more higher on the side of the risk curve and having certain personality traits that might be, suitable for entrepreneurship, especially once you achieve sobriety and are able to compete at a really high level where you're not hungover on the weekends, where you're able to work 16, 17-hour days to get things up and running and get through those early years, which are genuinely pretty tough and where a lot of people, I think, would give up. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of people do give up, which is why not many people do it. And I have to dig out the podcast I listened to. It might have been Dr. Andrew Huberman and someone else speak this week. And without doubt, we've witnessed it. The majority of people who suffer from addiction come from the more successful side of things, the more driven. It's almost like what can be a dysfunction can also really serve us in other ways, or seemingly serve us, because it's not always an easy path, working to the point of burnout and stuff. Workaholism, the socially accepted addiction, like
Right,
exercise kind of addiction,
right.
is the generally socially accepted side. And there's something you mentioned earlier, maybe about the 9 to 5 and corporate, and it made me think about something I heard about CEOs,
Hmm.
and someone talking about the gender disparity in CEOs. And he said, yeah, there aren't enough women as CEOs and stuff, but also, does everyone know what that involves to be that kind of thing? Do you want that? We're talking 80 to 100 hours a week for 10, 20 years.
Yeah,
We're talking like a monumental sacrifice in your life
for sure.
to achieve that. And that's what people don't think or recognize or see. And he said, regardless of men or women, why the fuck would you want that life?
Right, right, right.
But there are personality types. So kind of us crave being busier. I crave being busier. I don't know why I always fall into being busier. And it took me 10 years also, coincidentally, now I say it, 10 years of trying to chase everyone else's balance or the normal conventional balance before a couple of people said, no, that's not how my balance works. And my coach at the minute says he goes away for 10 days max, because after 10 days he gets restless and itchy, and that's how I feel. So he just has more little regular breaks. And yeah, I really recognize that my balance isn't the conventional, whether it's ADHD or what else is going on. And maybe that's some of what's going on with, higher functioning, addicts, alcoholics. I don't know. There's definitely strong correlations between the two. And I don't know quite what it is, but yeah, I also can't do a 9 to 5. It bores me. Even the thought, right? One of the reasons I like construction is the jobs are different. We're different places. Building work, more boring because I'm there 6 months a year. Electrical, great. 5, 10, 15 jobs a week. The thought of even driving the same route to the same job every day, year after year, I couldn't. Sometimes I have to drive a different route back just because I'm bored of driving that route back,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. 100%, 100%. I think that there's a lot to unpack here, but yeah, what do I want to say? I mean, I recently went to a mastermind, and we did this exercise where the person who was leading it had us put in a very small amount of information with a prompt that he wrote, and it spit out what your values were, and it brought me to tears.
Wow.
And one of my top values, my number one that came out was freedom. Which is so ironic because that pursuit of freedom, um, with unchecked response or without realizing that that came with responsibility, is what
Mm.
led me to drinking too much. However, it's also what led me to entrepreneurship, right? The ability to have complete and total location freedom and time freedom, in the sense that I set my own hours and I work for myself, is genuinely, was at the top of that list. And it was really, really powerful to see the AI, you know, tell me who I am as a person, because I think that that's a question that's kind of difficult, surprisingly difficult for a lot of us to answer. Who are you? Sure, you have the name Howard. My name is David. I'm 35 years old, but like, no, no, no. But who are you? And I think when you start and looking at what you really value,
Yes, yes,
it
yes,
can start
yes.
to do a better job of defining who you are. And yeah, just that output was insane, and it really brought a lot of clarity to my life,
Mm.
with regard to, okay, why do I do what I do? Why do I wake up every morning and decide to do this and not do that? So yeah, I don't know. It sounds like we have a lot of similar traits. I know people have called me ADHD recently. They're like, "Dude, do you have ADHD?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Um, but yeah, a lot of these characteristics seem to have a lot of overlap. That people that struggle with addiction might have ADHD. They might really want to have freedom and not wanting to do repetitive things. I'm also terrified of regret. What if I didn't quit drinking? and I kept continuing it for the next 10, 20, 15 years. You see people in rehab, you see people at these AA meetings, that are in their late 50s and 60s and have lost everything. And to me that was terrifying, just as
Mm.
much as it was inspiring to see the people that have been sober for 25 years. So the fear of regret of not seeing what my life would look like without alcohol, right, is something that really kind of pushed me forward. And for me, everything really clicked once I stopped being scared of giving up alcohol and started to get excited about what my life looked like without it.
Yeah. Interesting. I would say that fear, and I wouldn't say I'm scared of regret, but I don't want to live in regret. I'm not super fearful, I don't think. But it took me 5 years to realize I was riddled with low self worth and that nervous breakdown from losing everything after the volcano. One thing I realized I did was I chased to try and make up for lost time and feel like I've got to make up for this lost time, even though I was only 25 when I got sober. I felt like "Fuck, I have to catch up," and that probably was what led me to burnout. And you spoke about kind of identities, and this is an interesting one. I don't, for me, like the word entrepreneur.
Mm,
Not that I don't like the word. There's a specific reason I don't like it for me. And that's because when I had the nervous breakdown, I was running a building firm, had like £250,000 worth of extensions going on, running an electrical firm and running the rehab. And my defense, my best friend was meant to be running that, but he relapsed and died on me.
sorry.
Bastard. um, and and when people ask what do you do? I use the word I'm an entrepreneur. And when it all come crashing down and it got leveled and I looked at it using the 12-step method, did a step 4 on my best friend's death. Looked at, well, why are you so driven? Why do you follow him blindly? Is it money? No, not really motivated by money. So what is it? It's success. We drill down. Well, why do I need to be successful? Because if I'm successful, maybe people think something of me. And it was interesting. I started a rehab because I had low self-worth and maybe someone would think of something. And I used the word entrepreneur as validation, I've come to learn. So it was like my defense. If I tell you I'm an entrepreneur and you are going to ask what I do, which is always the way, then it's like I am something. I couldn't just be Howard. Howard wasn't enough.
Mm,
Howard was not enough. I had to be Howard the entrepreneur. And that's why, for me, I don't like the word for me because of that history. I have no problem with the word. Just for me, it's a dark word for me because I suppose it's not. Maybe I need to learn to free myself from that. But yeah, it evoked a time when I needed to use the word as an egoic defense
mm.
to the fact I had such low self-worth. Sorry, trying to get a mosquito there. So yeah.
No, I mean, it's fascinating hearing you say that because, I mean, at that same mastermind, there was also an entrepreneur's hypnotist. And we had a really powerful session. And afterwards, I went up to him and I spoke to him and I said, "Hey, man, I want to talk to you about what motivates me. Right now, I'm motivated from a place of anger. And I know that I want to really prove all of
Oh,
my haters wrong."
that was my mantra for years. I'll prove everyone wrong.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and I was like, I know that this place comes from a place of anger, but I want my motivation to come from a place of love. And I found a why in trying to uplift and genuinely, attempt to bring one of my Balinese staff members out of poverty became my new why, which was
Wow.
genuinely coming from a place of love as opposed to a place of anger, because I
Mm.
knew that, even if I was to become ridiculously, wildly successful beyond my craziest of dreams, if that, issue hadn't been sorted out of wanting to prove people wrong and doing things from a place of anger, regardless of how successful I became, that issue would still remain. So, yeah, it's interesting that you said that because his response to that was, "David, I think that you have a self-worth issue."
Mm.
And I don't know, where that necessarily comes from, but that's something that he said to me.
Yeah.
And it's something that I need to look into. And it's just part of this entire journey of sobriety, because I think that, getting sober and doing this type of work on ourselves brings a new elevated level of
Mm,
self-awareness that
mm.
was never present, when we were lost in the sauce, if you will.
Which means we can always grow.
Yeah.
But interesting you say that, because I'm just going to guess some numbers here. I would not be surprised if 75 to 90% of those CEOs we mentioned before, or people really striving in the corporate ladder, are driven by low self-worth, are driven to be someone, to be successful, to have money, to show off. That's what I always thought would fix me. Why I got into the trade at 19, I thought my life's going nowhere. If I have a career, then and start a business and I can buy a house and I'll get a wife and I'll have a nice car on the drive and I'll be all right. I now realize I could have had all of those things and I still would have never been all right, because it's an inside job. Yeah, we have to work on ourselves. But so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it is as much as 90% of those CEOs are driven by low self-worth or something similar. And I bet they'd never see it. Carl Jung, fantastic psychologist, speaks about shadows
Mm.
and armor. So, and one can be a defense for the other. So I did a shadow trauma workshop once, and I'd done a few, so I didn't have much to raise. And I said, I don't really know what to raise. We got to me, we'd gone through everyone else. Why don't you had a bit of time left? Everyone says I work too much, and we drilled down and it got further and further. And it turned out, I was just restarting the rehab. Well, but I have this real confidence. We got asked to headline talks on ethics in the industry. We changed the industry with medical standards. 50 to 100 rehabs have changed because of the way we operated and the way we brought standards to the region, and so on and so on and so on. And when I explored it, and this is where I get to kind of the CEO's bit, this was my mantra I'd tell myself, because this was the defense by this time, a few years on and a few years in. This was my defense to the 10% of me now that didn't feel good enough. What if I fail? What if I let everyone down? What if some people give up their jobs to come and work for me and we fuck up and they lose their jobs? But I had this mantra, and everyone will have a degree of little bit of this stuff going on. So I doubt you could ever squish all of it. Whereas before, it used to probably be driving me 75%. Now it's 10%. But CEOs and people like that probably don't realize they have these mantras which protect us from what Carl Jung calls the shadow. And that shadow, I have these mantras. I kept telling myself, how can we fail? How can we fail when we've achieved these things? And I had to tell myself that mantra, because 10% of me thought, what if I'm not good enough?
Mm-mm. What was wait, so I kind of missed, what exactly was the mantra though that you're saying?
It was more an internal dialogue than a mantra, just reflecting on all the success we'd had as an organization, how we'd shaped a whole industry in essence, and how we'd always been full for the time we were open up until COVID, or pretty much full, and keep reinforcing the success we'd had. Because I had to, because that was my defense. This reinforcing how successful we'd been was my defense for 10% of me is worried we're going to fuck up and lose it all.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. And I don't know, like, just thinking about it from like a business perspective, because that's had such a huge part of, what this recovery has looked like for me, has been my business. Um, you know, I spent a lot of time with the psychologist at Bali Beginnings. I spent a lot of time with Simone, and I thought that, similar to everyone, I mean, he's absolutely phenomenal, right? And there were so many people, myself included, that really struggled to isolate the question, or to find an answer to why I drank. And I think that a lot of people would say, oh, it's because of the death of your father, or it's because you're bored, or because you're lonely, living alone in Southeast Asia and living alone in China. And Simone was really able to isolate that none of that was true, and that in fact, that it was because I had no meaningful responsibilities.
Purpose.
Yeah.
It's the
And
most important thing in our lives. And it can be different for everyone. It doesn't have to be work. It could be, want to be a better father. I want to be a better son. Purpose can be anything. It's just volunteering. It doesn't have to be running a business or anything like that. But
yeah,
having something meaningful in your life. Apparently 97% of people don't like their jobs. And I can kind of believe that to a degree, or certainly a high percentage. So all the more reason we need some purpose or hobby, something,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
in
yeah,
our
yeah.
lives.
Especially when it's centered around the kind of the work that you do,
Oh, yeah.
and really helping people to the degree which you do. I mean, my God, like I said, my why was to attempt to bring my Balinese guy out of a situation of pretty severe poverty. And the work that you do with rehabs, I or your rehab is genuinely changing people's lives. So I've talked to people about how my plan is to one day start a rehab of my own. I've got a friend from home who's really, really, really well versed in the 12-step program. He's run a lot of sober houses, and he knows this industry, and he knows just recovery inside and out from a place of genuine passion. And so I would love to partner up with him and try to get into this business one day. And people have asked me about you know me mentioning this, and for as an entrepreneur perspective, I'm like, it's a great business. My rehab cost me quite a lot of money, and they're shocked at the price. And I'm like, listen, man, as a business, your ultimate goal is to sell a transformation. And what more powerful transformation than can you sell than changing somebody's life,
Exactly.
right? So the price tag of something like this is genuinely priceless.
Mm.
And so that's why it's such a good business to get into, if you ask me, because I look back on going to Bali Beginnings, and this isn't any kind of a plug at all. Um, Absolutely every single penny was worth it, because it genuinely changed my life.
And I guess the flip to that is we don't realize, but we're changing our life every day with drugs and alcohol. And over the years, just the drugs and alcohol cost a lot more than we spend on rehab,
Yeah.
let alone the real costs, the relationships, jobs, opportunities, homes, families, blah, 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 and losing ourselves.
Right.
So, yeah, well, there's lots I could come back on there. I'd say business and purpose or passion are the best combination, and you need the both. And that's where I went wrong for years, and where many go wrong, because passion is fantastic, but passion alone isn't sustainable, isn't necessarily healthy, because you don't know how to run something effectively. Business alone isn't the way to run a business, an organization like this. You need something more. Or you should have something more, in my opinion. One of the ways where we view ourselves as ethical, I was talking to another guy today. He said, well, I have someone, do you give a referral fee? And we say yes, because we give the money we spend on marketing, advertising, Google, Facebook. I'd much rather give it to you than some $1 trillion company who
Right.
won't even notice we exist,
Right.
know?
Right.
But I said, he said, well, what if they're not ready? And I said, well, we can't take them then. Well, that's how we make it ethical for us. Are we serving the needs of the client, or are we serving our needs?
I love that.
And we serve the needs of the client. We won't take someone who isn't ready. Balks at things is one of the reasons actually we keep 12-step in, is because it puts a lot of people off, which is good in a way, because it gives us a chance to test their readiness. Because if I can't talk someone into doing 12-step meetings for 1 month only, not even a month, 28 days, what else won't you do? And I'm quite clear, there's no obligation to do it when you leave. Absolutely, it's not for everyone. It's not perfect, but it's 28 days. And if you aren't sadly desperate enough to try that for 28 days, even knowing it's a free service for life that may stop you coming back for rehab, that's ultimately why we keep it there, because it is a free service for life that may stop you needing rehab, then what else won't you do? Is it education you'll shy away from? Is it meditation? Is it breath work? You're kind of sending me a message by sending me a message that you maybe don't have the conviction we're looking for, and I get some of the misgivings, absolutely. But yeah, so that's how we make it ethical for us. That's how we make it passionate, which is scary when we decided to make this decision after COVID and turn away a lot of people. It's easy to do now. Now we're doing all right. When you came, there were at times 2 people, which is losing without swearing, although I already have, a substantial amount of money, right? Scary levels of money. And that's how I ended up in 50 grand of debt, having lost a house.
Right.
When the volcano erupted, people didn't come for a few months. It was like a precursor for COVID. We were prepared for COVID because of it. But before you know it, boom, 2 months, lost my house, 3 months, 4 months, 50 grand in debt. And that's, bam.
Here in
have
Bali?
to shut. Yeah, 2017.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's scary having those values when it's quiet. It's a lot easier to have those values now, but that's the passion side, and that's the side we want to do things differently. That for me is a good entrepreneur, a good capitalist model. And the word capitalist gets bandied around badly today. I don't think we have capitalism in the world. This is my opinion. I think we have greed,
Right.
which is different to capitalism. Healthy capitalism, you should get rewarded for changing, innovating, growing, getting better, which is what we try and do. Being better, look after people, not take people who aren't ready, try and change. Medical standards 2017, blah, 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 aftercare today. That's our innovation. We want to be rewarded for our changes to the industry and doing things better. And that's healthy capitalist, healthy entrepreneurship in my mind, which people don't seem to see. But yeah, absolutely. I think the blend of passion with business sense makes sense, because without business sense, it would just go bust and fall apart.
For sure.
And without the passion, I'm not sure it would have the right motives potentially, but maybe I'm wrong. But obviously you're also driven by your why as you've lived this life as well. And you've been to the depths of hell as well. So
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, what you said and that, I think that let me make sure that I say this properly. I think that your approach of making sure that people are ready is incredibly ethical, and it's really, really honorable and respectable. I'll never forget when, we were on the phone before I went, and I was still in a place where I was trying to convince myself that rehab would teach me how to learn how to drink responsibly. It's so delusional,
I thought AA would do that for me.
Yeah,
So,
that's the whole, it's like I just need to learn how to drink responsibly, and
without the consequences.
yeah, and it's insanity. But
For us.
it requires swallowing some really tough pills. For me, it's kind of just like looking myself in the mirror and realizing that, like, okay, I've lost a ton of friends, I've burnt a ton of bridges, I've missed a ton of opportunities, I've injured myself to near death, and I've almost created a lifestyle and identity that is completely defined by the fact that I drink and party. And, that is a really tough pill to swallow. And I think that that makes a lot of people fearful of giving up what they feel like is their entire life because of how much of their lives is tied to an addiction, right? But once, you're able to, swallow that tough pill and realize, like, okay, this is something that I need to do, then the change can happen. But if you haven't swallowed that pill, then the chances of you being successful getting sober, I think, are slim to none because you're so fearful of giving up what you genuinely have defined your life by. So for me, that really took a rock bottom moment. I don't want to go too into what that moment was, but I was genuinely terrified that people would be able to exploit me by blaming things on my drinking. Right? It took something going horribly, horribly wrong, and people being able to point to the fact that I drank and was known for drinking, and me being like, I need to completely remove this from my life. And I did that out of fear. Um, but everything kind of changed as far as, the first few months being difficult to me, really hitting a stride and kind of forgetting about how many days I'd been sober and stopping to counting the days, stopping to check the app and just being like, oh, wow, another month has gone by. I don't know, another month is, holy crap, it's been 9 months. That stride got hit when I started to get excited about what my life looked like or would look like without alcohol, as opposed to being fearful of what I was losing, which genuinely was friends, was my ability to talk to women, thinking that I needed alcohol for all of this,
Mm.
to make friends, to continue to hang out at the same places, to continue to be charming and be able to get a girlfriend. I really had defined my identity around alcohol without knowing it, and it was super scary to give that up. So, yeah, just to touch on what you're saying, I think it's super ethical that you don't take on people unless they're ready to make that change, because it requires some serious guts and swallowing some seriously difficult pills to swallow to get to a place where you're ready to completely change your
Mm.
life. But once you are, there's no better solution than to seek help from people who do it professionally like you.
And you know what? Sometimes the best message we can send some people is by refusing them,
Yeah.
because, man, we won't take your money. It makes you question why, you know?
Yeah, it's like, wow, is it that bad? Even the rehab won't take me. That's
Yeah.
intense,
Well, why won't they take me? And we also do a different level of care with, normally with CEOs or the odd celebrity and stuff. It's a lot more private because some of the stuff they're really afraid of being out in newspapers and things like that.
Wow, okay.
And when we do that, so I'm remembering, why was I talking about this? When we do that again, lots in that space, lots of the players in that space are afraid to tell people what they need to hear because they don't want to lose their client. Some is financial based, if you're renting a 20,000 US dollar apartment for someone a month,
Right.
then there's a big financial pressure to do stuff. But we always say the same model applies. Your money is no good to us if we don't think we can help you. And that starts with, you have to be willing to do the work and suffer the boundaries and deal with the consequences as much as anyone else. And we need to be able to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Not putting your arm around and going, there, it'll be all right. It'll be going, no, you fucked up there. This isn't good. This behavior isn't serving you. And if it means they walk out, then they walk out. But at least they walk out with the best thing they can walk out with, not, with us just telling half truths to try and keep someone in the door and keep their money coming in.
Right.
I had a friend, sadly, which isn't quite like that, but got kicked out of a rehab the other day. They didn't lock the door, let him keep his money, let him keep his phone. Funny enough, he walked out, relapsed, came back the next morning. They kicked him out. But they said to him, you've broken the boundaries, you have to leave. But if you pay for another 2 weeks, you can stay.
Okay.
Yeah, shocking, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's the industry we're in.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, once again, not trying to plug you at all, just being completely honest about, what I know of you as a person. I think that, um, it requires somebody like you who is genuinely passionate about helping people, that is doing it for the right reasons, for, like a program like yours to be what it's worth and to be successful, and to get the results that I know that you guys are able to achieve. I've heard about so many other rehabs that are just a mess because they're run by people who are in it for the money, which there is an enormous amount of money to make. I'm inspired by it from like a numbers and entrepreneurial standpoint. There's a guy named Eric Spofford on Instagram who went from being a heroin addict to $100 million exit because of a
Wow.
rehab facility that he set up in New England, called Granite. And, people know that there's a lot of money in it. And I think that that brings in a lot of people for the wrong reasons. So just to like hear you say what you're saying about refusing people, even though they have the money to spend, um, is is amazing. And it just it really highlights that you're doing great work and you're coming from, a place of love and doing it for the right reasons, which is essential for getting people, good results and doing things the right way.
And ultimately, we do it because I can sleep at night,
Yeah.
and I'm not here to be other people's conscience. That's not my business, but I have to do what sits right with me so I can sleep at night. That's why when we went bust in 2017, I borrowed the money to pay everyone to shut rather than just go bankrupt and leave £50,000 of debt everywhere and go, fuck, went bankrupt. Sorry, guys. I got talked into originally by a director, and I'm very glad he talked me into it. Pip, borrowing money to pay everyone to shut again so I can sleep at night. In recovery, they say keep your side of the street clean. I just clean my side of the street, so I'm happy to stand on my side of the street. It's a clean place. It's a happy place. I can sleep pretty well most of the time. And that's what I want. It's about my conscience. What other people do is up to them, but I have to live with my actions. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you can live with the consequences.
Mm.
And I can live with my consequences for today.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Would you mind if we turn off the AC? It's kind of just
It is getting a bit chilly. Yeah.
Sorry for that.
But no problem. Well, do you want to talk about your dad at all?
No, we don't need to. I mean,
No.
Unless there's something that you want. I mean, it's not like I don't want to talk about him.
No.
I
want you to be comfortable.
Yeah, I'm totally comfortable talking about him.
Mm.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally comfortable talking about him.
How long have we been recording? 51. So 51. We're coming close. Yeah, I tell you, it just glows by in a breeze. Okay, that's all good then. Well, let's probably wrap it up in a second then, because we go for kind of like an hour anyway. It gives us a time to have a little chat and then set up before we got another one after.
Cool.
What would you say? So you mentioned Simone and psychology before. What would you say was the best thing? Now we are going to plug a bit of BB or ask a bit about BB. What would you say was the best thing about BB? Other than me. Don't say no,
please. The best thing about Bali Beginnings, I think just the overall kind of environment, schedule, and structure was super, super low pressure in the sense that, like, that the schedule was very comfortable. We had group meetings a couple times a day. The day started off with yoga and going to the gym. We were able to get a bunch of work done, but it didn't feel like, our days were slammed and we were super busy. Like, it was very relaxing and and genuinely comfortable.
Yeah.
And that was the type of environment that allowed for, 28 days to go by, which were, difficult days of early sobriety to be relatively manageable and comfortable.
Nice.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think, now that I know even a little bit more about your screening process, being in there with people that were really serious about it was also really helpful. I think that you've done a great job hiring some amazing staff. I love Jess. I love Matt in particular. They're both great. And whenever I see them, it's just like smiles and like, hey, how you been doing? So yeah, just an incredible environment that was super comfortable and kind of low stress, great schedule, great people. And then, yeah, without a doubt, Simone just being really, really good and being able to, have these conversations where he was able to, unpack the layers of the onion, and really get to the core root of why I drank, because as everyone says, the addiction or the alcoholism in my case isn't, the problem, it's a symptom of an underlying deep-rooted problem. So really isolating what that was, which for me was a lack of meaningful responsibilities, was a massive unlock, and I am incredibly grateful to both of you for that.
Mm. And I don't, this is my belief. I'm very glad you found your reason. I think my reason may have been low self worth, but I don't believe you need to identify the reason and say for sure it's this. I think we do need to go in and work on a bunch of stuff and uncover some things, and then over the years go deeper. But yeah, I don't think we need to have it completely. It's definitely this, if that makes sense, that drove it. And I don't think there's any one thing. There's probably one main thing and then a series of little things. But I'm very grateful you said about the schedule and the program, and there's the environment and staffing. Dr. Terry, our last clinical director before COVID, now runs a chain. He's group director for a chain in Singapore. He always said two of the most important things are staffing and environment, because they're so important for cultivating people's willingness to engage. That's where I furthered it. It's very easy to turn people off. It's hopefully we keep them turned on, and partly by picking the right people, right? It was very easy to turn them off, and the staffing and environment are two parts of that. And with regards to the program, that specifically came born out of an experience I had working at a rehab in Switzerland. And they worked them 5 days a week and slogged them. And they were constantly missing things and not turning up and exhausted. And they looked fucked, if I'm honest. And this works hard. The deep inward look, the groups, tension, the boundaries. It's not easy at all. And actually, it was witnessing that was what, after COVID, we decided to go to 4.5 days a week. Whereas before we had a Monday to Friday model, best simulating the closest working hours, intentionally. We went Monday, Tuesday, rest day, Wednesday, Thursday, rest day, Sunday, half day. So we went to 4.5 days specifically for that. The other side effect, which has great benefit, therapeutic value, is not overly burning people out, giving people a fair amount of free time and sitting with themselves. So if you burn out exhausted, everyone just crashes out, sleeps. It's quite easy in a sense. It's almost like overworking, working away from your problems and feelings, literally pushing away your problems and feelings with work, which was what led to my nervous breakdown, literally. And instead, by giving them a bit more energy, you have a lot more time for thoughts and feelings and have to sit with them. And we like to create a comfortable environment, as our David says, comfortable environment for people to feel discomfort. And that's a key part. If you're just too tired to feel anything every day, you're not getting some of the value. Whereas if you're actually there, a bit bored, waiting for tech time, have to find healthy ways to sit with myself, a bit uncomfortable. This came up in the group, have to sit with this. That's preparing you for the outside world. Being too tired to feel anything is not. Being frustrated, bored, sad, shameful, lonely, whatever comes up, sometimes happy, excited, joyful. Sometimes we drink on this, whatever comes up. If you're not too tired, you feel these things. There's subtle value in the stuff that's going on when we're not doing anything. And that is by design for you to sit with that stuff in a safe, healthy environment, which we believe more prepares people for the outside than them being so exhausted they just go and lay down and wake up the next day and do it again.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that going to rehab, is kind of fundamentally uncomfortable as it is, right? Like,
Oh, yes.
yeah. So, I mean, to be able to go, and AA is the same way, people have these preconceived notions about it. Everyone's seen that scene in Fight Club, where he's sleeping on the guy with the tits.
I thought of that. Yeah.
And it's this dark room and it's scary. And that's kind of what my idea of AA was before going to it for the first time at rehab, right? So I think that we have these ideas of what it's going to be like. I'm sure a lot of rehabs are, not that comfortable. And so to go to one and to step inside and be like, wow, this isn't nearly as bad as I thought it was, really kind of makes it like, okay, maybe, getting sober is actually a little bit easier than I thought it was. And it just makes the entire process significantly, easier in the sense
in
that,
some ways.
yeah, because at least for me, it was just pleasantly surprising, how easy it was to get through a day of not drinking because the rehab, the environment, the people, the total package was, exceeding my expectations with regard to how comfortable it actually was. In a time where we're working on something, and changing something and going through like a transformation that is fundamentally very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes, and we'll wrap up in a sec, but there is value in being discomfort.
Yeah.
Another David, the third David we've mentioned in this podcast, volunteered at rehab in Sierra Leone. And he showed me a picture, and this was voluntary. So the people chose this. And fundamentally, key point, they were chain ganged. They had like 10 guys chained together like prisoners from back in
Jesus.
the day. Voluntary. They chose that. They ate together. They went to the toilet together. They did everything. And he said, this is horrible. I said, well, key point being is voluntary. You won't forget that experience, You won't forget that comfort has value in some settings, but in sometimes so does the struggle, because you don't forget the struggle in a hurry, You don't forget that pain and you go, geez, if I've been chained to some other guys for 28 days, I don't want to fucking go back there again in a hurry.
For
So
sure.
there is some value in the discomfort as well. And I don't know which is better. Obviously, that's not legal to do in a lot of countries, and we're not condoning that, But yeah, there's no right or wrong with this. Some comfortable space to be uncomfortable, yeah. What we didn't want to be, and we get a lot of complaints sometimes from family members or ex-partners, well, why going to Bali to get well? Why not go to Sydney or New York or whatever? It's like, well, we're in a sunny, green, tropical environment, surrounded by wood, surrounded by plants. It's just more conducive for healing than a hospital bed or a rundown house. Why do you choose to go to a place like this on holiday rather than sit in a hospital ward? There's a reason, because it feels more healing for the soul.
100%.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I respect that. And I mean, people that have never been to Bali might not understand, but there is, you know, I'm saying this, from someone that believes in science. My father was a scientist but there is a genuine kind of an energy about this island, that's very powerful,
Mm.
and certain places have a healing energy or something about them that just changes people forever. And so, yeah, if people have never been to Bali before, this island is totally magical. And I think that I can't really imagine any other place in the world to do something as uncomfortable as swallow the tough pill of me needing to get sober, go to a rehab, and start doing AA meetings for the first time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it makes total sense. My mom even was like, David, you need to fly back to the States and do a rehab in Boston. And I was like, no, Mom, we're going to find one here.
Yeah.
We found you guys. So, yeah, kudos to you.
And maybe you can't picture Bali, or maybe you guys can't picture Bali. But you know what people can picture is a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Is what that's like. And what you can picture is walking in the woods or walking on a beach or walking something. So maybe you don't know what Bali's like or about, but I bet you know what the opposite's like. And it's kind of a no-brainer why one's going to be more conducive for healing.
Yeah. I mean, Bali is Southeast Asia. If you've never been, it can be raw sometimes. It's definitely different from the West, but it's also
Teaches you patience, all right.
Yeah, yeah, definitely gives you patience. And but I mean, every single, week I have my moment where I'm just like, good God, this place is absolutely gorgeous. Super lucky to call it home. Bali is always showing off. This island is probably the most famous in the world for a reason.
It's the number one holiday destination at the minute, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I never wanted to come to Bali in the beginning when I was busy backpacking around the world. I thought it was just like a honeymoon tourist destination. I kind of put it off for a while, and then I came here for the first time and pretty much stopped traveling.
Wow.
And I've been just coming back here religiously ever since, after seeing more or less the rest of Southeast Asia. So yeah, Bali is just lived up and exceeded my expectations. And, like a lot of other people, I now call it my home.
Well done. And well done on 20 months.
Sweet. Thank you, brother.
We'll wrap up there. Thank you very much. Yeah, well done.